In this video, I'm going to talk about how to identify the individual lobes of the lungs on both frontal and lateral chest x-rays. While this might seem less practical at first, it actually leads into a very clinically relevant topic in future videos, and one that you will surely be asked many times on the floor, that is, which lobe is the pneumonia in? Now, before we jump straight into it, let's first review the normal lung anatomy. I've oriented these two lungs in the same way you would while reading chest x-rays. That is, the left lung is on the right and the right lung is on the left. I do want to stress that the diagrams that you're seeing here are actually lateral views of the lungs, not frontal. And the reason we're doing this is to give you a better picture of what the lobes and fissures look like. Now, recall that the right lung has three lobes, the upper, the middle, and the lower lobes, which we're labeling for you here. The left lung only has two lobes, the upper and the lower. Technically, the left lung does have the lingula, which is kind of like the middle lobe of the right lung, but the lingula is incorporated into the upper lobe of the left lung. Anyway, the right lung has two main lines or divisions, and they are the oblique fissure or the major fissure, which is here, and the horizontal or minor fissure, which is here. The left lung only has one division, and that's this one, which is the major or oblique fissure. And what these lines and fissures do is that divide the lungs into their individual lobes. Now that's out of the way, let's go where the money is. The first lobe we're going to talk about is the right upper lobe, which is here on the diagram. Now I know when you look at an x-ray, you want to divide it into thirds and call it the upper, middle, and lower lobes. Let me tell you that while that makes some intuitive sense, it's completely wrong. The right upper lobe is actually here on a frontal x-ray. And if we draw a line showing the highest and lowest points of the right upper lobe on the diagram in the middle, this will actually make a lot of sense. For the lateral chest x-ray, you have to identify the oblique fissure as well as the minor fissure, as these are the borders of the right upper lobe. And so the right upper lobe is this whole thing here. And again, if we draw lines from the diagram across, this will make sense. Next up is the right lower lobe, which is here in the diagram, and here on the frontal x-ray. And it's probably surprising how high up the right lower lobe goes, but if you draw lines from the highest and lowest points of the right lower lobe on the diagram, this makes perfect sense. The right lower lobe also actually extends below the diaphragm, and this is because we're only seeing the dome of the diaphragm here. And so there are parts of lung that actually extend below the dome of the diaphragm. On the lateral, the right lower lobe is everything below the oblique fissure, which is here. And so this would be the right lower lobe. And again, it extends below the dome of the diaphragm. So if you've been watching closely, you should be thinking, wait, why do the right upper lobe and right lower lobe areas overlap? You must have messed up somewhere. So I've drawn the right upper lobe in green and the right lower lobe in red together here. And you can clearly see that the two lung lobes do appear to overlap. However, this is actually correct and largely has to do with the technical details of x-rays. When you take a point on a frontal x-ray like that, you're actually looking at the aggregate of everything behind it. So this small spot right here on the frontal x-ray is actually equivalent to everything on this line, which includes the right upper lobe, the right middle lobe, and the right lower lobe. And so you should be able to understand why the right upper lobe and right lower lobe areas should overlap on a correct frontal x-ray. Next up is the right middle lobe, which is here on the diagram, and here on the frontal x-ray. And again, this should make sense if you draw lines across. I do want to stress that the right middle lobe is a lobe that borders the right heart. And why this is important will be clear in another video. On the lateral, the right middle lobe is just between the horizontal and oblique fissures. So it would be here. Pretty easy, nothing special. Now that we've already gone over the lobes of the right side, the lobes of the left side will be a cinch. First up is the left upper lobe, which is here on the diagram, and here on the frontal x-ray. I know that this might look like it goes way too low, but it's actually how it is, and if you draw lines across from the diagram, it'll make more sense. The lateral is very easy. Just find the oblique fissure here, and everything above it is the left upper lobe. Also keep in mind that the more inferior area of the left upper lobe is the part that's in contact with the left border of the heart. Lastly, we have the left lower lobe, which is here on the diagram, and here on a frontal x-ray. And like the left upper lobe, it encompasses a bigger area than you would think, but it makes perfect sense if you draw lines from the diagram. On the lateral, if you draw the oblique fissure, the left lower lobe is everything below it, and like the right lower lobe, the left lower lobe actually extends below the dome of the diaphragm. I want to stress again here that the left lower lobe is not in contact with the heart border. It's the left upper lobe that does that. And that's really it. And so here are take-home points for you. Take-home point number 1. There are 3 lobes in the right lung, the upper, lower, and middle, and there are only 2 lobes in the left lung, the upper and the lower. These lobes are separated by fissures found in the lungs, which are the oblique and the horizontal in the right lung, and only the oblique in the left lung. Number 2, different lobes do appear to overlap on chest x-rays, but this is actually correct and has to do with the fact that we're compressing a 3D image with depth onto a 2D plane in which all the depth is compressed together. And lastly, the right middle lobe borders the right heart border, and the inferior border of the left upper lobe borders the left heart border. And why this is important will come up in another video. Thank you.